Thanks for joining us today for Base Features. It's a part of our Solid Edge training series. My name is Elise Woods. I'm one of the marketing specialists here at Swish Technologies, and I will be your host for today. Just a little bit on Swish. We've been a leading provider and partner of Siemens PLM for over 11 years. Our team is dedicated to providing you the best software solutions, technical support, and process-based training to help you design and manufacture better. Our commitment to changing the way designers and manufacturers learn and leverage PLM tools has been a major focus for us and will continue to be our goal going forward. Oops. Today, our presenter is application engineer Dylan Malik. For over 2 decades, Dylan has seen the growth and changes of CAD design and understands how the latest technology has really benefited many companies' processes. With his hands-on experience in sheet metal fabrication, structural design, surfacing, rendering, animation, and 2D drafting to 3D modeling. He is a certified Solid Edge professional and is a sought-after Swish trainer instructor with a great working knowledge of best practices that can help your team deliver products painlessly. With Solid Edge, there's so many different ways to utilize features with the program tool. There may be better ways to approach how you design. In this training series, Dylan will show us tools and tips which give you even more speed and flexibility while further expanding your knowledge in Solid Edge. Today, we'll be talking about base feature. Base feature is the first feature you typically construct in Solid Edge part or a sheet metal document. A base feature defines the basic part shape. You construct solid models by adding material to and removing material from the base feature. Some base features Dylan will cover are protrusion, sheet metal tab, and contour flange. During the presentation, if you do have any questions, please feel free to add these in your question box located in your GoToWebinar panel, and Dylan will try to answer all your questions during the presentation. So I am going to go ahead and switch this over to Dylan and have him take it away.
All righty, thank you, Elise. Make sure go to and out of the way. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to just show you is how to access the files from last week. I did sketching, and I covered pretty much the fundamentals on sketching, how to create sketches in synchronous and ordered. There was some pretty good stuff in there, and so for those who want to access that, if you just go to our web page and actually go to the actually, sorry, I clicked the wrong link here. I don't want to be printing. There we go. So on our home page, not on the, I clicked the wrong link there. So we want to go to the third tab right here, and it's cut your design time in half. You click this link. You can go down here to synchronous sketching with ordered or sketching with synchronous and ordered. Go ahead, just say add to cart and just check out. And this allows you to download the videos, all the training files, the PDFs, the PowerPoints. And we're going to do the same thing for this one too, because I probably won't get through all the tutorials, but I'll record the videos and walk you through the steps on how to do the tutorials, and we'll supply those for you to download too. So you just fill them out, click, and it is a purchase, which is $0, download the files. All right, so let's get into Solid Edge, and for those interested in knowing where I got the files from, all right, so if you just go into any of the templates, doesn't matter which one you use. I'm just going to anti-part template. And on the right side of your screen, you'll have a Learn at Solid Edge. And if you click a very first link here, choose a learning path, it takes you out to a login page again that does not require any login credentials. And if you just go to the last one, self-paced training and classroom, click there. And what I'm using right now is basically constructing base features. So if you just want to go into this tutorial, here's again, you can download it from our website or download it through here. With our website, you'll actually get the video of what we're doing today as well and what we did last week. So that's what we'll be using. So let's go ahead and get into actual what base features are and how we're working. All right, so we're in synchronous. We're going to start in synchronous. I'll do a couple of the word things here, but they're very similar in the process. Again, we covered sketching last week, so I won't go too much into how I'm doing the sketch on the screen. And of course, your typical workflow would be draw your profile, add your dimensions, add your relationships. I don't need any relationships on this one, so that's really all I need to start an extrusion. All right, so what we have here is the extrude command. Again, most of our icons have little videos associated with them, so as you hover over, it shows you what that icon does. All right, you typically don't have to use these up here for in the synchronous. You would actually just use your steering wheel. So I'm just in the select tool. I have a region here, so if I have a region within a region, again, so I have this region and this region, and you'll notice that the outside sketch is black. And I'll just show you quickly, again, for those who don't remember, or it's the relationship colors under the inspect tab. If you turn that on, it shows you when your profiles are fully constrained and the dimensions are from geometry. So obviously this sketch has no dimensions on it telling it where to locate X, Y. So if you wanted to take the time to actually do this, you can, there you go. So now that sketch is constrained. Then I say sketch, and it actually creates a sketch. You can see I have a little sketch tab right here. But as you hover over it, you notice it actually says region, sketch 1. So that's the actual feature that you pick. So if I grab that, you notice we get the little steering wheel on here, and of course we get this little quick bar that always pops up when you do any type of command. It's going to change per command, but it gives you the same little window that pops up. All right, so here we have our types of extents. I can't do through next, obviously, because, well, there's nothing to go through next to, so I don't even have that option. So it's finite and from to. And I also have the ability to do the symmetric. All right, so anytime an icon is gray like this, it means it's unchecked. If I highlight it, it's orange, that means that it's active. So anytime you see anything orange, that is the current active command. All right, so if I just grab the arrow, doesn't matter which side you grab. Currently, I'm in symmetry mode because it's active right here. So if I uncheck it, then it just goes one direction or the other. But as good CAD practice, you always want to try to maintain yourself around the center XYZ coordinate system. That way, it makes it easier to change things in the future because, well, the way synchronous works, it's going to interrogate the geometry and look if there's any symmetric features or any constant radiuses that are the same throughout the geometry. That way, changes are made without you having to put too much intelligence to it. So I'm just going to type in the last dimension, which is 5, and we have our base features. So as you notice, the dimensions came across that were on my sketch, which is great because now the dimensions themselves are actually driving the geometry. The sketch itself in synchronous is fairly useless at this point. I can right-click and say restore if I want to use it again. In this scenario, I don't typically delete them, but if you wanted to, you can always just delete it. And you notice, again, nothing failed. So for those familiar with ordered, sketches drive the geometry. So the sketch itself is dictating size, shape, location. Synchronous, again, doesn't really care. So at this point, let's go ahead and start locking some of these down. And the reason I say lock down is because right now, if I grab that face, I can just grab the arrow and just start pushing and pulling on it. All right, so I get nothing telling me that I can't do that. And now that I have all of my dimensions the way I want, you typically want to lock them. All right, so what I typically like to do is define, personally, because you can always go through your dimensions here on the left side on the PMI dimensions, where if I expand that out, you notice we have a lock on these, and they're all unlocked. I could go through and just click these and lock the dimensions. But I'm not really specifying anything specific other than the dimension cannot be changed. If I try to grab it, it's going to give me an error saying, hey, you can't do that, well, because you have dimensions blocking. All right, that's good, but what's not good is the fact that I didn't really define which way I want this part to go. Sometimes you want this particular direction. So at this point, you define, so now this face is the highlighted face, so if I change that to 12, well, that face is going to be the face that moves. Well, it's actually moving symmetric around the coordinate system, so let me disregard that. Because again, remember I told you, the solid edge interrogates the geometry every single time that you make a change. So again, it doesn't matter if it came from Crowley or SolidWorks or Inventor, it's going to look at the geometry and understand that it was created symmetric, so let's move symmetric. So that's what the design intent is intended for, to maintain that for me. But if I don't want that to happen, I can turn off symmetric. Now you notice when I make a change, it's moving in the direction that I told it to now, basically because I told symmetry to turn off. All right, there we go. So I typically like to lock the dimensions myself um, and go through and just click and unclick, lock to, or just again, to lock it, you just click it, pick the direction you want, lock it. So that way it always remembers the last time or the last face that you selected is always going to be the face that changes. All right, so that is using synchronous to create a extruded surface. Let me back out of this. All right, that will work. All right, so next is revolve. Again, we can go up here and use, brings up the same menu bar, but there's no reason to do that. You can just click this, and you notice it gives me the same linear motion, but we don't want to go linear this time. So if I click under this first tab, we have a revolved option. Again, I'll let the little video play. So as you notice, we pick it, we get the steering wheel. It's asking where the center location is, and then you pick the angle you want to rotate around. All right, so let's do that with revolve. So I click revolve. You notice we get a different look on a steering wheel. So right now, to move the steering wheel, you pick the little ball in the middle, center bearing. So that moves it to different locations. So if I grab that edge, you notice it snaps to that edge, snaps to particular edges that you want to go to. Let's say we want to revolve itself around that edge right there. So it attaches. Then you just pick the torus, and it goes into a revolve mode. At this point, you have two options, finite or 360. So finite, you just type in the distance you want. Maybe you want to go 45 degrees. Right-click to accept, and there you have it. And you notice we have something here on this geometry. We get this little extra sketch line. That's actually not the sketch that I used to create it with. I can actually delete that. But that's actually what they call a live section. All right, so live sections are there to help you either dimension certain objects that may be hard to dimension in 3D, which I'm going to show you next. So, for example, if I could hide all my design body, it leaves nothing but my live section. I could actually go through and add dimensions to my live or to the live section that will actually. Oh, I'm trying to go angle. Sorry. So if you want to maybe possibly change an angle of a face or something, you can actually apply that to the live section, and that live section actually drives the geometry. So it's kind of a not really bidirectional. They're both in the same. So let me just turn on the design body again. So now you notice that dimension on that face is now being driven to the location of the actual live section. And something else to note that these live sections are actually accessible at the assembly level. So for example, if this live section, I needed to line it up to another section, I can actually just put my steering wheel on that hold and just kind of drag it around, or well, it's kind of locked with dimensions right now. Let me turn off dimensions. That way I can actually just kind of position it and just kind of move it like this. And while I'm in the assembly, I can tell that hole to line up to another live section hole, which is kind of a handy little tool. All right, so you can uncheck the live section, turns it off. All right, so that is the process of extrude and revolve. All right, and so the opposite basically occurs at this point. If I wanted to go ahead and put a cutout on here, so if I just want to, again, lock to a face, I pick a profile that I'm going to create, hover over the face, lock that I want to, hit the little lock with the cursor, or just hit F3 on your keyboard. Again, if you don't remember these steps, you can always look down here at the lower left-hand corner of your prompt bar, and it gives you the information of what to do. So right now, I'm in the circle command. It's telling me to either pick the center of a circle or snap to a key point. All right, so I'm just going to just randomly draw a location on there. And all right, so now I have a base feature. So the next step is to cut geometry. Again, extrude will do the same thing. You just define whether you want to add or cut geometry. So if I pick that region and I had my symmetry turned off, if I drag it out, it's going to add a protrusion to it. If I hit the shift key, which puts me in symmetry, you notice it puts me in the cut mode. So now I'm actually cutting through the geometry. All right, so there we have it. So now I have a feature tree with protrusion and a cutout. All right, so let's switch over to a new template, and let's start an ordered style. So again, I'm just going to do an ANSI part. All right, so I'm going to right-click where it says synchronous, and right-click and say transition to ordered. All right, so now we're going to actually do an ordered feature. So we have the option to create sketches, just like you create a region. You just basically the sketch would be its own feature in the Pathfinder, but the fact is you cannot delete it. If any features are based on it, everything subsequent after that would fail if that happens. So my workflow is to basically to do my extrusions and revolves within the actual sketch profile within the geometry. So if I just now pick a reference plane that I want to draw on, and it automatically rotates, and I'll just draw something similar to the first one, just center that on there. Exact same steps, smart dimension, give me my height. Again, if I want to go ahead and dimension that out, if I want to, let's go ahead and just finish the profile. All right, so there we have it. So now we get our menu bar up. It's very similar to the one that we get in synchronous. We do have a couple additions in here. We have symmetric, like we have in synchronous, but we also have another tab called non-symmetric. So symmetric would give me the option to kind of say, okay, I want, oops, sorry, I didn't click out of there. It gives me the option to just kind of dimension overall. If I want to change that, you can always go to a non-symmetric type extent, where I can go, say, 10 inches in one direction and 2 inches in another direction. And what that actually does, as you notice, gives me two dimensions. So I have a 2 here and a 10 here instead of an overall. So that's really the only difference in the extruded type options that we have. And of course, again, the only option we have at this point is from 2 or finite. The other extents would come into play if I did add another feature to this. So let me just do another cutout like I did on the previous one. So let me just add another cutout here. All right, so in here we have the options now all lit up. So finite extent, again, just asking me for a key point, like my coordinate system. I can snap to that, or I can snap to an endpoint or a midpoint of this edge. Again, from 2, so if I can say from one face to another face, through next, point of direction, obviously it would fail if I pointed to the outside. So if I point to the inside, it's just going to go all the way through the geometry, and the same thing through all. Again, point the direction, and it goes through the geometry. All right, to point, and if you put your cursor, if you notice, if you put your cursor close to the middle, it'll point in both directions. So if you do have geometry left and right that you want to cut through, you don't have to create two different features or position it anyway. You can actually just cut in two directions at one time. All right, so the reason I show you this is ordered history, again, is based off of features pre-ordered. So if I try to, rearrange this in some way, or delete a feature, obviously all the features are going to delete. All right, so I switch back to ordered, or excuse me, synchronous. And again, we have a history tree here. The reason nothing really fails if protrusion or cutout or particular order is because we can sort. So if I right click, and I can actually sort by type. So we have a cutout as the very first feature in our tree. Well, in ordered, that is a possibility. You cannot create an ordered feature first as a cutout. You have to have a protrusion first. So again, the power of synchronous, being able to manipulate your tree is a very useful tool to be able to lump things together. So if you have multiple cutouts, you can group things together and put them in a single folder. So your cutouts, your holes, your rounds can all be grouped together. All right, so that is the base feature using part. So we did have a couple in sheet metal. So let me switch over to sheet metal before I get to the first tutorial. And it's the sheet metal. All right. So again, the very first feature we're going to create, you notice all my features are grayed out here because we have no regions created. Again, we're in synchronous to start with. So I'll just create a tab feature. All right, so I'm just going to draw my sketch again from the center point out. Throw a couple dimensions on here. So take length and width. There we have it. All right, so now tab and contour are available. Contour wouldn't work in this example because this is basically a tab feature. So one of two things can be done. Again, you can use the tab, and you have the options here, face, chain, single. And I'll show you here what these other two options are. Single and chain, those are more for open profiles. The face is what the option you have if you just leave it as default, because that is the actual face that you want, again, which is the region. All right, so just, again, using the select tool, this is my workflow, the way I do it. You can use these anytime you want, but I just usually say select tool, grab the region, it brings up the same menu. You can apply material if you wish to right now. You can actually apply the gauge. So if you know you're going to make it out of the maybe 14 gauge, you can apply that. Apply the bend radiuses as a default. I'll just say apply to model. All right, then you just kind of pick the direction you want. And just by clicking the arrow, you go left or right. All right, there is no symmetry in sheet metal for the tab feature. It has to go one direction or the other. So I'm just going to point down. There's the thickness for the 10 gauge and accept it. All right, so there's your base feature. And again, I'll just go ahead and do a cutout as a subsequent feature. But I'm going to do it as an open profile this time. So if I just do a little profile like that, that's fine. That's on that face, and I get a region there. So that would be no problem just to cut out. But sometimes your sketch has to be in a different location, which I can actually do. So let's take my sketch that I just, oops, wrong one. This sketch that I just created, and let's move it off the face here. So as soon as I do that, you notice the region goes away because the sketch is no longer touching. So I have one just big region. But I can still do a cutout. So I would just do a cut, but you notice we have the option to do the face chain option. But we want to actually do something specific. In synchronous, we have to specify whether it's a closed or open profile. In ordered, you can just pick it, then pick the direction. So they work very similar, but you just have to define it one extra step here. So I'm going to say that's an open profile. Now you notice we have these options, chain or single, instead of face. I'll just say chain in this scenario, pick that, right click to accept it. All right, so as an open profile, we can pick which direction do we want material to be removed from, outside or inside the V. We're just going to say inside the V, right click to accept, then you define the direction to go. Again, you have the options just like you do on the base feature to define the direction. In synchronous, if you just say finite and just drag it through it, that's perfectly fine. The difference in that is in ordered, if you just say finite, that actually is finite extent. But in synchronous, it doesn't really matter. As a matter of fact, I can move this part way over here, which is a lot further than where I did the finite extent. And you notice we still have the feature there. So finite through all through next, really not all that important in synchronous. The feature is going to be maintained regardless of which one you choose. All right, so this contour flange is still grayed out. All right, contour flange has two different functions inside of sheet metal. One as a base feature, and secondly, as a flange type feature, because you notice we can actually put flanges on here, all day long. But I like wrapping a flange around my profile. So let's do that. So I'm just doing a little quick sketch on this face. All right, so now I'm just going to do a contour flange, pick my sketch as either a chain or single. I'm just going to do a chain. Again, select the location that you want, which direction. Obviously, I can only go one direction. It doesn't matter if I pick this arrow again or the other arrow. It understands which direction it can go. But I can also take that little flange and wrap it around. I'm not sure if I can get it to go. There it goes. Yeah, so I can actually get it to go around all those corners. And there we have our profile. So if I wanted to flatten that out, since it's sheet metal, capabilities are there. There's my flat map, my flat pattern, nothing interferes. So that works. All right, so let's go back into synchronous. So let's let's use the contour flange example as a base feature. So let's get rid of this geometry. All right. So we're going to have to create a region, but it's an open region. So that's how contour flange works. It has to be an open profile, just like the flange I did. This profile is going to be an open. And this is something I did, when I worked in production world, creating conveyors. I'm going to make a U-shaped trough. And again, this is going to be a contour flange. All right, so again, just like the sketch, you always want to, again, draw your geometry. Dimension the geometry, relate the geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and do the equal. Go ahead and give this height, and go ahead and center this there. All right, then you go and start changing your geometry. Everything's going to move as expected. There we have it. All right, so Now contour flange is active. And again, we have an open profile just as it's needed. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab contour flange. Again, if you want individual features on here, I'm just going to go to chain in this selection. And again, pick the whole thing. Pick the arrow for the direction I want. Again, just no matter which side, you're going to define it after the fact. And we get another arrow here. So this is the last arrow. It's asking me which way do you want the material to go. Do I want it to go material outside if I draw the ID, or to the outside if I want to go the OD? All right, so I'm just going to go say, let's point to the outside and give it a distance. Let's just say 36 inches. And there we have it. All right, so just again before, we have just the way it creates it as individual tab features. So I can come over here again, flatten it out. Oops, still trying to flatten it from the previous one. Let me reflatten this. Pick the face, pick an axis. So there is your blank pattern of that. All right. So now let's get to one of the tutorials. Again, there's only three different tutorials that are associated with this. So let me show you what you'll download. All right, so in the zip folder that you download for the parts, you basically get 3 parts. You get a cup, a jaw, and a jaw round, and there's some other tutorials in the book. So let me open up the PDF here. All right, so the first tutorial we're going to do, that's all talking about how to rotate around and move geometry. And these are some of the examples that I just did for you on revolve and extrude. All right, so this is the first tutorial we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and walk through this first one. It skips around, so it only shows a couple of things, then it goes to another tutorial, then it gets back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the whole process of this one, and I'm going to record the other ones for you as well to be able to look at and walk through yourselves. So let me go ahead and just get started on it. The tutorial, I can tell you now, uses millimeters. So whether you use ANSI millimeters or ISO, you're going to go ahead and want to start in the right template. So let me close back to the home screen here. And we'll just start from scratch, and I'll work through this. I'm going to say new again. You notice I'm in ANSI inch here, so if you load the defaults ANSI, that's what you're going to see. To get to the millimeters, you click the new button, and it's going to bring you to our dialog where you can actually go through and define which type of template you're going to work. I use ISO, not just ISO metric part. All right, so let's go ahead and start our sketching. All right, again, it's just a simple rectangular profile. If you hit the drop down again, you have different types of options. I'm just going to go rectangle by 2 points. I'm just going to lock to the plane to start with and just kind of draw a profile out here. And I'm not really going to define the size because I'm going to use dimensions to do that now. So now let's go ahead and throw a few dimensions on here. So length and width. All right, this also has a radius in here. There's just 2 different ways to do radiuses. You can actually draw this as a rectangle, extrude it out, then add a round feature to it, or if you wish, you can obviously add the fillet in the profile. So let's go ahead and say when we want to add a fillet to it. Let's make it a 40 millimeter fillet, just typing in 40 millimeters. Then just kind of pick out the corner, and you notice both edges highlight. And when you pick it, it moves and it does the fillet. But you do notice what happened there is my 185 now turned to 145. So I'm going to go ahead and define the 40 using a smart dimension. So I did that. Let's move this back. All right, there's a couple of different ways. You want to delete it and replace it. That's always an acceptable way. But if you look at the bottom when I click it, there's some commands for it. So you have an Alt plus drag, a Control plus Alt plus drag. The Control will actually maintain the 145, which I don't want. I just want it to go ahead and use the Alt drag, which is going to change the location of this, but go ahead and snap it back to where it was at. So if I hit Alt on my keyboard and hold it down, put my cursor over the little red dot, and just kind of drag it to another endpoint, you notice it will resnap. My profile turned black again. So I'm good to go there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and just pick a face of my region. I'm not using any extrude tools again. Just pick any arrow. Again, hit Shift on the keyboard if you want to go one direction or the way or the other. And this one, we just want to go 70. All right, simple as that. The dimensions lock onto there. What I like doing as I work through my geometry is uncheck my dimensions because it can get pretty cluttered pretty quick if you have all the dimensions on all the time. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add a subsequent feature here. And let's go ahead and actually do the cutout on the side. All right, so again, we're just going to go ahead and do a line. Remember, lock with an F3 to a face. You rotate around by hitting Control H. And again, that is controlled by this lower right-hand corner. You notice if I hover over that icon, Control H is sketch view. So anytime you're in a sketch view, so if you have an F3 up here in the corner of the lock, you're locking the sketch view. So if you hit this little button, no matter, so if you kind of zoom off the screen or rotate around, if you hit this little sketch view, it'll zoom you right back to your initial view and rotate to the 2D view that you're locked to. All right, so that works in ordered or synchronous. All right, so let's go ahead and create my geometry here. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly draw a little sketch. You notice you don't have to make sure you're attached to anything specific. You just want to make sure that you don't attach to profiles behind the sketch. So I'm just going to go and kind of hover right here. And you notice we get these little dash lines from this edge to this edge showing that I'm lined up to it. And let's go ahead and just continue it on. All right, so now so I draw the profile. Now let's go ahead and dimension the profile. So let's go ahead and throw a few dimensions on here. So I'm sorry, just dictate the height. So from here to here, and overall length, and the height to the top, and the distance to the end here. All right, so we still don't have it fully defined, and the reason why is I didn't relate anything. So right now, nothing's related. So I would use a relationship. I would use a horizontal vertical, or perhaps collinear. I like using horizontal vertical because it graphically shows you the two edges that are aligned. So now that's aligned. So basically, this is the only line in this line, and the reason why is because, well, they're just kind of floating off into space. But the main portion of it is what I need. So now I draw the profile, relate the profile, dimension the profile. Now let's go start changing the profile to match what we need. So I'm just going to go through and type in the appropriate dimensions. And there we have it. All right. So I have the region now created. All right, so it's on the face, so that's why we actually have the region. So it would be a matter of actually picking that face. Now, again, we don't have to really define whether we want to cut or add. Again, if you're just push through, it's going to go ahead and automatically cut that for you, so there's nothing to define there. You notice it's a closed profile, so we don't have to define it. And just go ahead and accept it. Turn on your PMI dimensions again. If you click them off, click them on, then they all become active. And I do notice I have something, that was the initial dimension that was located to that particular height, but the second dimension cut that away. So there's really nothing for that dimension to attach to. Again, a good example is using the Alt button to go ahead and to attach using Alt plus drag to reattach that to the existing face. All right, so that there's a couple more steps, and I'll go ahead and continue on recording this for you after the webinar is over with, and you'll be able to download those in the next day or two. I don't want to keep you too long, so we'll try to keep this to at least 30, 40 minutes. So let's see if there's any questions before.
Yes, we do have one question. How can I make the view cube in the lower right corner show up?
Okay. That's actually my GoToMeeting out of here. Yeah, so what we're referring to, this is a view cube. There should be an option under settings. Options. I think it's under view. So I know there is actually settings to turn that off and on. or because I mean most of the settings are actually set into that. So if you go to the right click settings, it may be transparent because you can actually turn the opacity to 0 or turn it off because right now I have the opacity set to 5%. So you can go back to settings. So I got to look through the. I'll publish that actually. I'll put that in one of the videos to show where the actual setting is in options. I can't remember which tab it's actually under, but there are settings for it if you right click and go to settings. Uh, so if I turn it to 0, it may be off, but as you hover over it, it should come back on. But again, if there's a setting to turn it off and on, I will look for that and actually find that for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dylan. That was all the questions we had. Okay, so yeah, as Dylan showed you earlier, you can go to our website and access all the practice files and the tutorial videos that he's done. The URL is posted on your screen right now, so that's where you can get any more of the further tutorials we weren't actually able to cover today. Also, we have another session coming up. It's on December 14th at 2 p.m. Central Time, and this one's on advanced features. This webinar will cover more features, including lofts, sweeps, and blue surf, and Dylan will show us how you can quickly make changes with these shortcuts and tools. If you haven't registered yet, I will be sending out a replay video in your inbox in the next couple days, and then, of course, the URL is listed there, and that's where you can sign up for more. Thanks everyone again for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Thanks again, Dylan.
Thank you.